Welcome to the hidden architecture of the human mind. For centuries, we believed we were rational creatures, masters of our own thoughts, captains of our own souls. We thought we knew why we loved, why we hated, why we succeeded, and why we failed. We were wrong. What if I told you that every decision you make, every person you're attracted to, every mistake you repeat, is being dictated by an invisible puppet master? A force hidden deep within you, a force you cannot see, but one that controls everything. This isn't mysticism. This is the world as seen through the eyes of the man who mapped that hidden territory, Sigmund Freud. You see what people do, but you don't know why. You feel like you can't read anyone accurately. You see the mask, but never the face behind it. Psychoanalysis, Freud's revolutionary and controversial method, was a bomb thrown into the polite drawing rooms of human consciousness. He told us we are not rational beings. We are animals, driven by primal urges, haunted by our childhoods, and constantly lying, especially to ourselves. This video is your guide to that hidden world. We will uncover 9 dark psychological truths from Freud that function as a key to unlock the most complex machine on earth, human psychology. This isn't just theory. This is a practical toolkit on how to read anyone. This is the foundation of what many now call dark psychology. Not for manipulation, but for the one thing we all crave, the truth. Get ready. We begin with the most fundamental truth of all, the one that holds all the others. What you think of as you, your thoughts, your beliefs, your immediate awareness, is just the tip of the iceberg. Sigmund Freud's most profound discovery was that this conscious mind is a tiny, fragile raft floating on a vast, dark, turbulent ocean. That ocean is the unconscious mind. This is where your real self lives. It is a primal vault containing every desire you've been taught to repress, every memory too painful to face, every fear, and every secret wish. You think you choose your career? Your unconscious chose it, based on a need to please a parent. You think you fell in love? Your unconscious pushed you, recognizing a pattern from your past. Human psychology is not a rational process. It is a puppet show, and the unconscious holds the strings. So, if it's hidden, how do you use this to read anyone? You look for the leaks. Freud called them parapraxes, but we know them as Freudian slips. A Freudian slip is not a mistake. It is the truth, accidentally slipping past the censor. When a politician, intending to say, "I honor my opponent," accidentally says, "I honor my enemy," that is the unconscious leaking the truth of his aggression. When your boss, meaning to say, "We need to work harder," says, "We need to suffer harder," he has just revealed his true feeling about the company's state. But it goes deeper than just words. It's in their jokes. Freud wrote an entire book on this. A joke is the mind's clever way of saying something forbidden. When a coworker jokingly makes a cutting remark about your success, "Well, look at Mr. Big Shot. Guess you won't talk to us little people anymore." That is not a joke. That is raw, unfiltered envy, gift wrapped in humor to make it socially acceptable. When you want to read anyone, stop listening to their polished, conscious statements. Listen to their mistakes. Listen to their jokes. Listen to the words they choose when they're tired, angry, or distracted. That is the unconscious mind, the real master, speaking its true language. Think about it. The last joke you heard at the office, what was the hidden truth in it? If the unconscious is a cellar full of monsters and forbidden desires, why don't we go insane? Because, as Freud explained, the mind builds a guard. He called it the ego, and its primary job is to protect you from the truths you cannot handle. The tools it uses? Defense mechanisms. A defense mechanism is a mask. It is an unconscious lie the mind tells itself to reduce anxiety and protect its self-image. And everyone is wearing one right now. Psychoanalysis is the art of identifying which mask someone is wearing. When you can do this, you don't just see what they do, you see what they are hiding. Let's look at the 3 most common masks. First, there is denial. This is the mind's most blunt instrument. It simply refuses to accept reality. The smoker who says, "Cancer won't happen to me." The person in a toxic relationship who insists, "But he loves me." When you see someone refusing to acknowledge an obvious, painful truth, you are watching denial in action. They are not stupid, they are terrified. Second, and perhaps the most powerful tool in dark psychology, is projection. This is when you have a quality in yourself that you cannot accept, so you project it onto someone else. You see your own sin in the other person. Freud saw this everywhere. The liar who trusts no one. The unfaithful partner who is obsessively jealous. The insecure person who calls everyone else arrogant. When you want to read anyone, listen to their strongest criticisms of other people. This is often a confession. They are, unconsciously, describing themselves. Third, there is rationalization. This is the intellectual mask. It's how we make an emotional, irrational decision and then create a perfectly logical sounding excuse for it. The person who procrastinates on a project isn't lazy. No, they are waiting for the right creative inspiration. The person who stays in a dead-end job isn't afraid of change. They are being loyal and practical. When you hear a perfectly crafted, logical reason for a clearly emotional behavior, you are listening to a rationalization. To read anyone, look for the real emotion hiding behind their logical excuse. Denial, projection, rationalization. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a mind at war with itself, a mind desperately trying to protect itself from a painful truth. Who in your life just popped into your mind? Do you see the mask of denial, projection, or rationalization in them? Or perhaps in yourself? Forget what you've been taught about nobility, self-sacrifice, and higher purpose. Freud's most dark proposal was this. At the core of your being, in the deepest part of your unconscious, is a primal force he called the id. The id is not you. It is the it. It is the animal. It is the baby born inside you that never grew up. And it operates on one principle, and one principle only, the pleasure principle. It wants what it wants, and it wants it now. It doesn't care about your diet, it wants the cake. It doesn't care about your job, it wants to sleep. It doesn't care about your marriage, it wants attraction. It has no logic, no morality, no patience. It only knows 2 things: pain, avoid it, and pleasure, get it. Most of human psychology is simply the ego's desperate, lifelong attempt to bargain with this screaming monster, to keep it from destroying your life. So, how do you use this to read anyone? When you see behavior that seems irrational, self-destructive, or pointless, stop trying to find a logical reason for it. You are looking in the wrong place. Instead, ask this one powerful question. What immediate pleasure is this action getting them? The person doom scrolling on social media knows they should sleep, but the id is getting an immediate hit of dopamine, a pleasure fix that overpowers the logical ego. The person who procrastinates isn't thinking about the long-term pain of failure. The id is feeling the immediate pleasure of avoiding the difficult task. The person who explodes in rage isn't making a point. The id is experiencing the raw, cathartic pleasure of releasing pent-up tension. This is the secret to reading anyone. People are not driven by long-term, rational goals. They are driven by short-term, emotional, pleasure-seeking urges. If you want to understand why someone is doing something, stop listening to their reasons. That's just rationalization. Instead, find the hidden pleasure. Find the id. What is your irrational behavior? And what immediate pleasure are you really getting from it? If the id is the animal desire for yes, now, Freud identified another equally powerful force. He called it the superego. If the id is the devil on your shoulder, the superego is the angel. But it's not a kind angel. It is a harsh, judgmental, and unforgiving critic. It is the voice of your parents, your teachers, your religion, and all of society's rules internalized into a permanent judge inside your head. The superego is your conscience, and its only job is to punish you with feelings of guilt, shame, and inadequacy. And you are the ego, the conscious self, trapped in the middle. The id screams, "I want it." The superego screams, "You disgusting animal, how dare you even think that?" And the result of this internal, unwinnable war? Anxiety. According to psychoanalysis, anxiety is not an illness that comes from the outside. Anxiety is the sound of this internal conflict. It is the ego's terror as it tries to serve two masters, the primal urges of the id and the impossible moral demands of the superego. How do you use this to read anyone? You observe their relationship to this war. A person's entire personality is shaped by how they handle this conflict. Look for the two extremes. On one side, you have the person ruled by an overly dominant superego. This person is rigid, judgmental, perfectionistic, and suffocated by guilt. They never break the rules. They are obsessed with shoulds and musts. They judge others harshly because it's the only way to silence the harsh judge inside themselves. On the other side, you have the person ruled by the id. This person is impulsive, chaotic, and seemingly free, but their life is a wreck. They are slaves to their immediate pleasures, unable to delay gratification, leaving a trail of broken relationships and failed projects. When you read anyone, you are not just seeing a person, you are seeing a living battlefield. Is this person paralyzed by guilt and shoulds? Their superego is winning. Is this person recklessly impulsive? Their id is winning. Are they constantly anxious, worried, and defensive? You are watching the ego, trapped in the crossfire. Are you living under the rule of the critical superego? Or are you being pulled by the impulsive id, that anxiety you feel? What is the war inside you? This may be Freud's most controversial and most dark psychological truth. Why is one person generous and another person greedy? Why is one person obsessively neat and another person hopelessly messy? Freud would argue it has nothing to do with their adult choices. It was all decided before they were 5 years old. He proposed that all human psychology is shaped by psychosexual stages. In each stage, our pleasure-seeking id focuses on a different part of the body. And if we experience too much trauma or too much indulgence in any one stage, we get stuck. He called it fixation. And that fixation, that unresolved childhood conflict, becomes the template for our entire adult personality. Let's take the oral stage infancy. The focus is the mouth, feeding, pleasure. If an infant's needs are not met, they become oral fixated. As an adult, this person's unconscious is still trying to get that unmet need met. How? Through the mouth. This is the person who chain smokes, overeats, or bites their nails. But it's also the gullible person who swallows every story they're told. Or, on the flip side, it's the person who uses their mouth as a weapon, the sarcastic, biting critic. When you read anyone who has a powerful, often destructive relationship with their mouth, you are looking at an unresolved conflict from infancy. Now, let's look at the anal stage. toddlerhood. This is when a child learns control. Specifically, potty training. It's the child's first great conflict with authority, the parents. If the parents are too strict and shaming, the child becomes anal retentive. This is your classic type A personality. They are obsessively neat, orderly, and controlling. They are stubborn. They are uptight. Their adult personality is a recreation of that childhood battle. They will never lose control again. But what if the parents were too lax? The child becomes anal expulsive. This is a hopelessly messy, disorganized, and chaotic person. They are defiant of all rules and authority. Their personality is a rebellion against the control they were never taught. So, how do you read anyone with this dark knowledge? When you see someone's defining trait, don't ask why they choose to be that way. Ask, what childhood conflict are they still trying to solve? That coworker who is so obsessively controlling that they micromanage every detail? Freud would say they aren't detail-oriented. They are anal retentive. They are terrified of the mess of losing control. That friend who is so sarcastic and biting with their words, they are oral aggressive, still trying to express a rage that began in infancy. This, according to psychoanalysis, is the tragic truth of human psychology. We believe we are free, but most of us are just ghosts, chained to a 5-year-old version of ourselves, repeating the same patterns forever. This is a profound realization. Are you seeing your own patterns, your need for control, or your biting sarcasm in a new light? We are halfway through the map of the human mind, and if this deep dive into psychoanalysis is already giving you a new lens to see the world, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. We go on journeys like this every week, into the minds of philosophers, psychologists, and artists, to bring you the tools to understand yourself and the world. You don't want to miss what's next. Now, back to the darkness. We now enter one of Sigmund Freud's most controversial ideas, one that shocked early 20th century Vienna and still shocks us today. You call it love. Freud called it sublimation. He argued that the primary driver of all human life is libido. This is not just sexual desire. It is life energy, a primal, creative, and desirable force. But society, represented by the superego, says you cannot act on these desires freely. So where does that massive energy go? It is sublimated. It is rechanneled from its raw sexual goal into socially acceptable ones. Romantic love, for Freud, is sublimated sexual desire. Your career ambition? That is libido channeled into dominance and success. Your greatest work of art? That is sexual energy sublimated into creation. But he went further, into the territory of dark psychology. He proposed the Oedipus complex, or Electra complex. Freud said the child develops an unconscious desire for the opposite sex parent and sees the same-sex parent as a rival. This is our first great psychological conflict. We repress it, of course. It's too horrifying to face. But that repression doesn't go away. It shapes every future romantic relationship you will ever have. How do you use this to read anyone? Analyze their type. Freud would argue they aren't looking for a partner. They are unconsciously trying to resolve a childhood relationship. The man who is always attracted to damsels in distress, he may be reenacting a desire to save a mother he perceived as weak. The woman who only dates older, powerful, controlling men, she is seeking the father figure she both feared and desired. When you read anyone, look at their romantic partner. Often, you are not looking at a romantic choice. You are looking at a ghost from their childhood nursery. Look at the patterns in your own attractions. Is it possible you're not choosing a partner, but trying to solve a puzzle from your childhood? In modern human psychology, we call it jealousy. But Freud understood it on a deeper, more primal level. He identified envy as a core driver. It is not just, I want what you have. It is, I hate you for having it, and I want to destroy it so I don't have to feel inferior. This is a dark psychological truth no one wants to admit. Civilized society, the superego, teaches us that envy is ugly, so we cannot admit to it. Instead, we use another defense mechanism, reaction formation. We mask our envy by pretending the opposite. How do you read anyone using this? Listen to a person's irrational criticism. When someone hates something, a celebrity, a boss, a trend with a passion that defies logic, you are not listening to criticism. You are listening to envy. The coworker who says, I can't believe she got the promotion. She's so fake and just a suck-up. This moral attack? It's a mask. The unconscious truth is, I wanted that promotion. I am envious that she got it, and I didn't. The online commenter who writes, these people are so shallow, just showing off their wealth. This judgment? It's envy, disguised as moral superiority. Psychoanalysis teaches us this. A person's most violent criticism reveals their most hidden desire. When you read anyone, look for their irrational hatred. People don't waste energy hating things they truly don't care about. They attack what they secretly covet. Be honest with yourself. That person you irrationally hate or criticize, what is it they have that you secretly wish you did? This is, perhaps, the most terrifying and dark idea in all of Freud's theory. After witnessing the carnage of World War I, Freud realized that libido, the life drive, could not explain everything. How do you explain war, cruelty? And most of all, how do you explain self-sabotage? He proposed a second dark twin force to libido. He called it thanatos, the death drive. Freud argued that deep within every living organism is an unconscious desire to return to the inorganic state, the peaceful, non-existent state before life. This is the part of you that wants to give up, the part of you that knows the relationship is toxic but stays, the part of you that knows you should work but sabotages your own opportunity. This is the core of dark psychology. We are not just seeking pleasure. We are also secretly seeking our own annihilation. How do you read anyone with this horrifying truth? When you see someone consistently sabotaging themselves, stop believing they are unlucky or just making mistakes. You are watching Thanatos in action. The friend who always goes back to the toxic ex? They are not in love. They are unconsciously seeking the destruction that relationship provides. The talented colleague who always finds a way to ruin the big presentation at the last minute? They are not careless. They are being driven by an unconscious need to fail. When you read anyone, look for the patterns. Human psychology is not in the single event, but in the repetition. The repetition compulsion is how Thanatos shows itself. They are not unlucky. They are unconsciously arranging their own failure, over and over, pulled by a drive they cannot even begin to understand. This is the darkest truth. Can you identify the death drive in your own life? That pattern of self-sabotage you just can't seem to break? This is the final, and perhaps the most freeing psychological truth from Sigmund Freud. We spend our whole lives trying to be normal. We look at other people and assume they have it all figured out, that they are rational, stable, adjusted adults. Freud would laugh. His final dark truth is this: normal is an illusion. Nobody is normal. We are all damaged. We are all ruled by an unconscious we cannot control. We all wear defense mechanisms. We are all fixated by our childhoods. We are all a chaotic mix of libido and thanatos. We are all, to some degree, neurotic. Normal is just a word we use to describe the majority. Here is how this changes everything about how to read anyone. You must stop looking for normal. You must stop being shocked when people act irrationally, selfishly, or self-destructively. They are acting rationally, according to the irrational laws of their own unconscious mind. Instead, do what psychoanalysis really does. Identify their specific neurosis. Don't ask, is this person normal? Ask, what is this person's primary defense mechanism? Are they a projector, a rationalizer, a denier? What is their fixation? Are they oral, needing constant reassurance? Or are they anal, needing constant control? Once you accept that everyone is operating from a hidden wound, you stop being judgmental and you start seeing. You stop being shocked and you start understanding. This is the ultimate power to read anyone, not to judge them as abnormal, but to understand precisely how they are abnormal. What a relief. If normal is an illusion, what is your specific neurosis? What is your primary defense mechanism? We have journeyed through the dark corners of the human mind. Using Sigmund Freud's map, we've learned we are ruled by a vast unconscious. We forecast that we wear masks to hide the truth, that we are driven by pleasure and haunted by death, that we are chained to our childhoods, and that ultimately, none of us is normal. These truths are dark. They are unsettling. But psychoanalysis is not a tool for judgment. It is a tool for understanding. It is not dark psychology for manipulation, but a lens for compassion. Because when you can read anyone, you realize that their worst behaviors, their anger, their envy, their arrogance do not come from a place of strength. They come from a place of hidden fear or pain. You now have the tools. The next time you speak to someone, your boss, your friend, your partner, listen. But don't just listen to what they say. Listen to what they don't say. Listen to their slips, their jokes, and their criticisms. Because that is where the truth lies. Now, I have to ask you, which of these 9 dark truths from Freud hit you the hardest? Which one made you see your own life or someone else's in a completely new light? Go down to the comments section and let me know. I read every single one, because your insights are part of this collective journey. And if this video provided you with genuine value and gave you a new key to understanding human psychology, show your support by hitting that like button. It tells us to make more content just like this. Thank you for walking through the darkness with us. Subscribe for more. And until next time, listen to what isn't being said.